I'm Chris Crystal. Welcome back to Definitive, and thank you for your time. Wanted to just state very clearly in the beginning, none of this is considered to be or should be considered to be a investment advice or portfolio guidance for how you should be investing. The discussion point that I have is merely or more about the trends and the developments within the market, both the strategic and the short-term momentum-driven plays. So these are ways to look at the market for the trends and possibly what you could discuss with your investment advisor for your portfolio or for your investment strategies. Any of the names that I mentioned are not specific buy or sell recommendations. They are merely discussion topics in an area that I see developing within the market. And with that, I want to wish you the best of luck and thank you very much. Okay, so we had a lot of fun when Biden came to Europe. That was great. He got to meet with the G7 and the European Union and discuss the climate change goals and objectives. And what I think is fantastic about this is that you have two government spheres within the North American and then in Europe working together on roughly aligning the same goals that they have. And whether they're working against China, with China, or for really their own citizens, that's the advantage. Because at this point, there's been a tremendous amount of money that's been created. So we've had a lot of money flow coming into the markets, and we've had a lot of support from the central banks. And we have the debt on vacation this summer. It's also on vacation. Corporate debt in Europe has been rising, and the debt payments, many of them are currently on vacation, and strategies are being worked out so companies are not going bankrupt because we need the growth. So there's a fear of inflation, and like we've discussed, inflation has been here for quite some time. The consumer knows the inflation and very often talks about the inflation before the Fed or before a central bank will act. And so when the Fed Governor Powell said the other day that he was going to raise rates possibly in 2023, the market reacted to it as a sell-off. Now, I think that's funny because if the market had reacted to it, which would be a more positive way, it would have been to say, okay, let's buy. Because if you're going to have growth, then you're going to need to actually control the rates if you're playing around with rates. I mean, if you're a central bank and your objective is to control the flow of the economy so that it grows at the Goldilocks growth rate, then you need to stem the growth when the growth is getting out of control, and you need to actually help the growth when the growth is not there. So the Fed saying in 2023 that he's going to raise rates should be seen as a good thing, because that means that it's pretty much in line with Europe, where by the 2023 we should have a steady growth back and that there won't need to be so much stimulus in the market. So that's very strong. Now, another real positive with the climate change goals is if 2030 is the peak carbon year for the EU and 2050 is supposed to be a phase out of the carbon, large carbon emitting, oil, gas, petroleum products, then it's going to be very hard to achieve. There is no question there. But if the ideas behind this are to phase out and start using other alternative energy sources, then how would you make money? And is the growth going to be enough to drive it? And I think that's really the key point here is hydrogen is really the clear winner here in Europe. You see the use of hydrogen power plants. You still have a lot of gas, and you still have the ability to make hydrogen from gas. You don't have enough plants of that yet, but by 2030 we should have enough online that we may be able to actually achieve that goal of phasing out or having the high carbon area. So there's two ways to address this, either the hydrogen or the nuclear. The hydrogen looks to be the clear winner, and it's the fan favorite within the 300 and so plus people living within Europe. And globally, you have a lot of people looking at it that way as well, just not China, not India. They love nuclear. They're building more nuclear than ever, and that's for the reliability. Hydrogen would be a very reliable source once you have it in place and up and running. And a case and example would be somebody or a company like Vattenfall, which is converting a plant in Hamburg to be a hydrogen power plant. And the wattage would be able to provide something like 200,000 homes. It would be right there at the port. There's a potential that you could even make the hydrogen for the fuel if there's enough ship tankers, or maybe you'd have to build another hydrogen plant. However, the point is that they're well on their way. So many companies are already doing this within the space for power production. So Vattenfall is one of them to take a look at. You have the grid operators like Iberdrola, which is also doing this, or changing around the computing system and the actual grid network to adopt to a hydrogen power basis. So there's two ways to make the hydrogen. You can do it through hydrolysis. You take it directly from the water. The Dutch are doing very, very well with this. In fact, Vattenfall has a number of plants in Holland where they're already doing this. You can look at Rotterdam and you can see what's happening there. You can see NextEra Power as another example of a company that's directly involved in this. And then you have another way to do it, which is the way Japan is looking at this, and that is taking gas or coal, primarily gas, and then using that to burn and then turn into ammonia nitrate, and then you use the result to make hydrogen. And although it's called green, it's by many people gray because it's not a clear use or clear reduction of carbon. You can capture, but that takes another process, and you need the filters. And filters are a nice word, but it's not like a coffee filter. There's a little more dramatic process to it. So the idea is a good idea, but the end goal would not be the same. So that's one way to look at it. You look at the power producers, and then you look at the grids, because the grids will have to be redone. And then you also look at if the same companies that are helping build power plants, the same companies that are helping build grids, take a look at Alstom. That's another interesting company to look at because of what they're doing with locomotives. And this is again addressing the issue where you take fuel cells because you have the hydrogen, and they're not using the combustible hydrogen. They're using the fuel cells to convert it. And I mean, hydrogen is very, very combustible, but they want to lower the risk. And so you make these engines or locomotives, and they're selling 6 of them into Italy with the potential for another 8 to the northern Italian railways, I think it is. And I just don't want to say it in Italian. My Italian's terrible. And they sell each one for about 23 million, and the car or the locomotive will transport about 160 people. It'll have a range of 1,000 kilometers. It'll also have batteries so that while it's doing things like braking and it's producing the power for the hydrogen, it'll be able to generate more power. And so that's how they're going to use the transportation. And another key component to that, I mentioned already, the fuel cells. 3 of the biggest names in there are you have Bombardier, you have Ballard Power, and then of course you have Cummins engines. And these 3 companies are the primary leaders. You do have a Chinese company, very strong contender, where they've produced far more of these type of transports in China, and they're state-owned. But there are other names in there, and I'll come back with that, where we can talk about the hydrogen in say, China and India. And this is in a unique way, or a very strong way, that you could invest in the market, or you could look at in the market for ways to invest. The other alternative, of course, within the hydrogen space would be private equity. But so unless you're a high net worth individual, that's not going to be available to you. But within the hydrogen space, you have the ability for the wind power and the solar power. And this is why these 2 have been going crazy. It's not so much because they're going to create a new energy source that's going to power your home. It has an ability to power some of your home. However, the large use of it's going to be as a supplement to the hydrogen. So because we need a baseline power to constantly provide power to hospitals, traffic, networks, your iPhone, and whatever it is that you're using generally is running on electricity. So The solar power and the wind power provide a supplemental energy source to the hydrogen to provide maybe in down peak times while the hydrogen is being built up, and then you have a power source. And you'll need batteries for that. And then generally lithium ion are the big winners there. And then within the windmill and the solar panels, they're building those out. But remember, you need something like 67 acres or hectares for for 1.5 gigawatts of power of windmills, wind parks. So, and I always say, look at the land behind it, because if you're going to build the land, which is going to take a considerable amount of land, far more than say with nuclear or hydrogen plants, you're really going to need a lot of land. You would want to look at what the cost would be, and there are plenty of examples of investments, especially in the US, where they're laying out the cost of, say, maybe 12 million for the Amazon park down, I think, Kentucky or Tennessee, and that's part of their 10,000 gigawatts that they now have. And that would be able to power something like 500,000, or I think one of the other figures I saw from Amazon was 2.5 million households, and this is part of Amazon's ideal to go carbon free. And but you need this power also for the hydrogen plants. But if you buy the land, or if you buy a real estate investment trust that is investing in these alternative energy sources, that could be something that's very interesting as well, because they are paying out dividends as a result of the profits they make from the investment trust. And again, you need to talk to anybody about this who's an investment advisor for you and a registered investment advisor before you make any investments. And you certainly should be doing any sort of research that you need to do before you buy anything. So just a thought on how to play off the Biden visit to Europe, and I'll come back to you with a little bit more on some other topics as well. But good luck and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.